Pittsburgh is a magnificent skyline and a lot of wonderful places to look at the skyline downtown, but there is no place in downtown where you can look out at town and the rest of the city.
I think it's very interesting that here in Pittsburgh we have something that's so unique and so underutilized.
It's the largest, highest space on top of any building in the entire world. I mean, it literally is the roof of the world.
It's just a place ready for some expression.
And we started having what we would call the High Point Park investigation. It's a totally imaginary thing, but it could be real, and that's what we're trying to do.
This is the future, and it's why I teach these people who are trying to solve social problems by using business techniques.
I mean, development is all about integrating a team, the design elements, the financial elements, the marketing elements, and the programming elements, and all of that.
So, the site is the top of the U.S. Steel Building. Our basic program is to provide a publicly accessible space on the roof.
The story really starts in August of 2001 when I was travel editor at the Post-Gazette, and the news came down that they were going to be closing the top of the Triangle, which was the restaurant on the 62nd floor of the U.S. Steel Building, which had for years had the reputation as the best view in Pittsburgh. And I wrote a column suggesting that the city find some way to make use of some of that space on the 62nd floor to provide the same sort of public viewing experience that you could get when you go to New York and went to the Empire State Building or the CN Tower in Toronto or the Eiffel Tower. I mean, every great city has a place where you can go and look at the view, and Pittsburgh is one of the great urban landscapes, but we didn't have one.
The U.S. Steel Building we're talking about today is the second newer U.S. Steel Building. It is 64 stories, 841 feet, by far the tallest building in Pittsburgh.
It's actually the 121st tallest building in terms of height or the number of stories.
The building itself is shaped like a triangle, and of course the downtown part of Pittsburgh is frequently referred to as the Golden Triangle.
Not only is it a triangle, but it's actually oriented exactly like Point State Park.
And so you have what the marketing materials when the building was built actually referred to the steel triangle within the Golden Triangle, and you have the sides of the triangle essentially, two of the sides essentially paralleling the two rivers, the Monongahela and the Allegheny.
You know, rooftops are fascinating places, I think, especially in high-rise building, you know, because it offers both from this kind of the city point of view, a point of reference. To me, it's very important for cities to have points of reference, to have landmarks, first of all, in a visual sense, number one, so that any visitor to a city could immediately recognize a city by those landmarks.
It sort of acts as an emblem of the city, and this was really quite conscious. I mean, not only do you have the connection to the steel industry, which, you know, sort of personified Pittsburgh for many years, but you also have the physical qualities where the U.S. Steel Building, in that sense, takes on the form of the city. It carries its skeleton on the outside. The steel that you see is the steel that actually holds the building up.
The whole, you know, fabulous kind of natural characteristic of steel can be, in fact, displayed and not being covered up by some other material. So for us as architects, that's a very exciting idea, right? To be able to get a material to be exposed and to be displayed in its natural state, if you like.
Of course, U.S. Steel was showing off its product line, so they chose Corten steel, which they were really pushing at the time as a sort of new invention for building.
When the building was finished, the literature called it the world's largest chunk of rust. Now, in this case, it is good rust.
The Corten steel is interesting because it rusts purposefully, but it doesn't corrode. And so you get actually a protective coating on the outside, so it's possible for the steel to be exposed to the weather.
And this is really the only building that, high-rise building, that Corten is used so extensively. Typically, Corten steel are used for bridges, you know, and kind of low-rise structures.
And then secondly, you run into issues with fireproofing is the other reason why steel skeletons are usually internal to a building.
Traditionally, you would cover it all up with some, fire protective material and thereby hiding the steel again, right? They came up with the idea of filling those columns with water. Now that's really another a very creative idea. And that, until today, is the tallest water-filled structure in the world, until today. And so the idea is that the water fills up all this column, and in the event of fire, a pump will start up and the water will get circulated, thus removing the heat, so that the steel would never get to a temperature where it becomes dangerous.
Buildings, when they build them big, they tend to get narrower towards the top. Either they taper, or there's a number of columns, tubes they call them, they get smaller. But when they built the U.S. Steel building, they built it so that the roof is exactly the same dimensions as the ground floor. As it turns out, it's an acre. Well, how wonderful would it be if we had an acre to wander around in? I mean, that's really a park-size experience. And unlike those other places, you're going to have the whole sky, the whole canopy of the sky over your head. To the west, you can see to Ohio. If you look to the east, you can see Laurel Ridge and Chestnut Ridge, which are, the beginnings of the mountains. It's going to be something like you can't experience anywhere else in the world.
Pretty early on, we talked about the possibility of having a competition to build constituency. And in this case, I like to say the race is really the prize. It's the process of getting people engaged in the design, what it could be. And in that case, when you end up with 5 winning entries or 1 winning entry in the end, you have a great idea, but you've got a whole constituency of people who are really excited about the idea.
I think sometimes in universities we do live a little bit in glass castles, and we don't really have a chance to interact as much as we would like with other departments and people that think differently.
CMU has a great school of architecture, and so the thought was, how can we engage some of those minds in thinking about this process? And similarly, there are some really analytical people on campus at the Heinz College, at the Tepper Business School.
So I kind of hatched an idea to make an interdisciplinary competition between architecture, so there could be a design, and business students from Tepper, and public policy and MISM students from over at Heinz College, and maybe even some other departments.
Our students typically engage in their work as individuals, or maybe a small team of folks who are the same age, the same class as what they are. In this particular competition, we've got first year, second, third, fourth, and fifth years, because we have 5 years in our program.
The schedule's very intense and very tight. The School of Architecture is going to meet and throw out a competition for every student in that department, which is to come up with a design in a group for the top of the U.S. Steel Tower. They've got 3 days.
This is potentially a very significant platform. It might actually come to pass that they're being involved in a process that would actually result in something being built on this high point of southwestern Pennsylvania.
I want to see what they come up with in terms of the innovative ideas.
We think that there are potentials for taking advantage of the sun and the wind to actually generate power, to capture rainwater.
And then you get out, you're in an acre and a half of open space. And so how do you make that an experience?
Another thing that I think they'll be interested in is the potential of this to show things that aren't somewhere else in Pittsburgh, that people will want to come up and see, even if they're from Pittsburgh.
And then I guess other people can just try and sketch some ideas.
And then I think that the students are very much about taking these ideas and understanding what kind of form-making possibilities there are, space-making possibilities, and I mean, we might see some crazy stuff. I hope we see some crazy stuff, so that they can really exercise their imagination and stretch our conceptions of what this should be.
Who knows what's going to come up? That's the wonderful thing about it. It has an acre of imagination to work with here. I have to say, I mean, it exceeded my expectations. We had 32 different teams of 7 or 8 architectural students.
I went to bed the night before very scared that, people would be overwhelmed, they might not be able to pull it off. I would wake up the next morning, there would be nothing there.
They were incredibly out of the box, imaginative, wonderful, really innovative designs.
No two are the same. We've got anything from a kind of glowing aviary on top of the building to a really wonderful, playful landscape that you walk up, you start off down below and you wind your way up a series of paths and trails and you end up kind of up on top with this incredible view that wasn't apparent to you when you were even down just 20 feet.
There were some very innovative ideas for what could grow up there and how water could be collected and distributed for plants. Some wild, sustainable technologies up there that could basically take the building off the grid and provide electricity down through the building.
Is a challenge for a team that's fairly large, that don't know each other, and are really unfamiliar with the project until the moment that they get it. So that's where I think the real work happened, was that they were able to pull this off. 32 teams were able to pull it off.
This is one of the most challenging things I've ever done, to have to pick only 5.
We could have picked another 5 that would have been equally good, so I think it's fantastic.
So thanks very much for coming. It's exciting to do this, and I'm going to walk you through what this is. You've got your
I can't wait to see the
brief.
next
Everybody
stage.
should have a handout.
Because I have no idea if they're going to embrace this new role they have and how they're going to do with it.
I've done 5 teams, and you're color-coded, so remember your color, please. There's at least 1 MBA Tepper student per group, and then there's several Heinz students, and we have a few engineers and people from some other departments as well, a couple PhD students. And what their job is then is to take the design that they're assigned to, and they're all different, and then work within the framework of that. And it may change and morph a little bit over time, but provide the business case for that.
I doubt if you've ever worked with an architect, and I can guarantee that none of the guys on our teams have worked with ISI folks or Heinz School folks. But we think alike, and we are very complementary.
Students have a chance now to really operate like it's going to be in the real world, where you have designers and business people and financial people and people that are focused on politics and public policy, all together, all working together towards ultimately the same goals.
Any excess, we just run down the drains that are already on top of the building.
And maybe it can, although it's not like drinkable, but potable, I mean, it can, if the natural precipitation, the storage can be used to like wash the dishes, whatever, for the restaurant.
I mean, the business students, I think, are going to have to come to grips with the idea pretty quickly and then dig deep.
They're going to have to go talk to people, they're going to have to crunch some numbers, they're going to have to do analysis about visitors to the region or people that are just living in the region. Are they charging to go up to the roof? Is this a not-for-profit organization?
Everybody would be there. I mean, how often do you get to take a date to the top of the tallest building in Pittsburgh?
Date night. No, anniversary night.
They will have Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and all day on Monday.
The business plan should incorporate what they call the triple bottom line: the fact that it's green, the fact that it's self-sustaining, and the fact that it provides a civic benefit.
How can this project be financially sustainable? What are the revenue streams? What are the capital costs of getting it underway?
Of each of those elements, we could save for the interior.
You can see what is from that. You can start dividing it based off a percentage if possible. So.
Are they paying us a fixed sum to lease that space, or are we taking a portion of the profits?
Well, I was looking at what the profits are just to see what we would do, because I have no idea. I didn't know that there was the option of collecting both.
But that depends again. If we plan to make up a gallery, like show a brief history of Pittsburgh and then a couple of other venture items.
The students in a normal competition could just walk away from it because they don't have to deal with the next step. And so this is the beauty of having this next step, is getting our students to have to answer back to some of their questions.
So that the case that they present at the end of the day, at the end of the competition, is really a very thorough analysis about why this makes sense as opposed to another idea.
I don't expect that there's going to be a complete business plan produced in a period of 4 or 5 days, but I do think that there'll be analysis of certain issues that will be critical to help us make our case in the future.
Nobody on the faculty will be a judge. We've picked people from the real world that are interested in sustainable green design.
Out of this competition, I expect to find something very innovative that we could possibly take to the next level, being implementation.
This is such an unusual site to develop and what you could do on that site. It's going to be very interesting to see what they come up with, but I'm scratching my head trying to think of what I would put up there. So.
Some of them I actually had to back up and think some of these designs really don't work for the very top of the U.S. Steel building, so it's going to be interesting.
What you're about to see is basically the living embodiment of the fact that here at a university we of course teach theory, but we also teach practice, and so you're going to see some very interesting projects, I think, come out of this. 5 very different things. Let the games begin. All right. All right.
So this is our neighborhood, 840 feet in the air. First of all, you have the observation deck. Second, you have a lot of green space. And third, you have a restaurant and bar for people to visit. This would be about a 4-star restaurant. And finally, what you see here highlighted in blue, that is showing you that we have interior space. That is what is essentially 10 foot and upwards in height rooms that can be utilized throughout the winter. So we will be getting revenue all through the year.
Another important part of our project is the strategic use of green elements. So we plan to use the passive ventilation and shading, and also we have in mind a potential reinvestment in microturbines, which is a project in development. The water energy is expected to be tapped by rainwater harvesting and also grey water recycling systems so that the water used can be reused. So by using these 2 green elements, we are hoping to get a LEED certification up to the gold standard.
How much will it cost? Around like 33 million we were thinking, and this is being very, very conservative. How much revenue will we bring in? So across these 3 dimensions, tickets, restaurants and bar, and then finally the conference room, we'll have an annual revenue of around $13 million. We believe around like less than 10 years to pay back this project. So to conclude, as we said, we started with Imagine Pittsburgh. We all know these different buildings across the world. We believe with a project like this, we would rebrand Pittsburgh, we would give Pittsburgh a name, and with what we deem as our neighborhood, we'll be able to create an entity that doesn't only help Pittsburgh, but help Pittsburgh grow in the right direction. And with that,
Today we bring to you the UPMC High Point Lookout.
Let's look at the area around the building. It's just green space. This is garden space that will be open to the community, as there will be sections of the garden that are open for seedlings and plants to be taken from the rooftop to people's backyard in Pittsburgh. Also on the 3 corners of the triangle building space, there are glass boxes built so people can have a view looking down towards the glass, seeing the ground, and as well as looking out and around. As you enter, there's an elegant ramp that wraps around the edge of the building, coming up into the 3rd floor, where we have glass windows looking out on all 3 angles of the city, along with a cafe and a bar on the top as well.
Our building will be powered by thin film solar panels. We will also install LED lights. We will also employ Energy Star appliances, and we will also use rainwater to irrigate the plants.
We estimate that this structure will be complete in 1 year. Cost $18.4 million to build this structure. We expect 3 different types of revenue potential. The visitors, basically, that would be the ticketing revenue. And we have a 2-tiered rate structure. I mean, there's this rate structure of $7 that goes in if they want to enter just the primary level. The lookout on the top would be a $15 rate charge. Our proposal is that we have both an indoor and an outdoor structure on top of this facility.
We're going to create an external elevator, which is also like a gallery ticket sale area where as you go up, you can look out, enjoy the view. have a mini gallery as you go up, so the 10-minute ride up, going up is not boring. We wanted this place to be everything that Pittsburgh is about. Stained glass from Pittsburgh Glass Center and other areas to fill out the car. Cafe restaurant with all the Pittsburgh cuisine that people want to have. Central space and gallery, which can also be used as an event center in the off-season.
Things we were thinking of is using titanium oxide to capture pollution. We could look at the massive amounts of gray water that you often see dropping in cities, and it's troublesome to take it away. We would actually like to harvest that and treat it so it could be used for water consumption even within the building. And also a big component will come from translucent PV panels. We basically think our main revenue will come from renting out space to allow restaurants to come up there and cater to these clients. Also ticket sales. We use a segmentation strategy to extract value from the different activities. Basically what we think is that after 5 years we'll be able to generate $7 million of annual revenue because of these fees.
The other parts are, of course, the Green Park area and the gallery areas, which is what Pittsburgh is all about. It's about greenery, it's about people enjoying and appreciating the arts and just having a good time. So that's what our design is about.
Now the centerpiece of this design consists of an architectural masterpiece, a geodesic dome in the center that houses an aviary that will be visible from miles in any direction. And during the day, the dome will collect solar radiation via photovoltaics, and at night it will be brilliantly illuminated by LEDs. Visitors, when approaching the roof, will be greeted by a visitor center, which will house a Pittsburgh history exhibit, coffee shop, and gift shop. A wide open space for performing arts events and outdoor cinemas in the summer months and ice skating in the winter months. A fine dining restaurant will be available. There's playgrounds in place. There's a daycare in the building. And then all of these attractions are connected through green space and gardens, which will harvest the rainfall and are also backed up by a gray water irrigation system.
The whole theme of the building is to be green all around, and there will be vegetation, and we are mostly looking at plants which are local to Pittsburgh and which will have flowers blooming for most part of the year and which will also be green for a longer duration in the year. We have to have a safety measure in place, so we'll have a 10-foot tall glass railing all around the building. And there will be glass etchings so that when you're looking through the glass, you know what exactly you're looking at, and if there is some history associated with it, we'll have it written right beneath it. So you know what you're looking at, and you're also informed of what it is.
In terms of financial sustainability, I think we're in pretty good shape. We're looking at a payback period of 5 to maybe 7 years. It's a relatively low cost, relatively speaking, at $6.7 million. We get a ballpark rough order magnitude figure of income, which is just over $3 million a year. Now I want to stress though that this is not just a static icon, it's really a fun, interactive space that offers something for everyone, and it will serve to unite the residents of Pittsburgh in one common area. And what better societal benefit can you ask for? Thank you, and we're happy to answer your questions.
What we'd like to do for the steel building in Pittsburgh is put its head back on it. And I bring you Skyline Park. Arthur will go over some of the architectural vision.
The design consists of 3 main parts, which are the media screens, the landscape, and the interior media room. During the day, when the screens are not turned on, you can actually look all around to Pittsburgh and play on the park, and even this passage here, you can go through back to the interior. So the landscape really plays with the people. You can come in and go to the leasable space, which can be used as a conference room, a concert room, showing movies, art installations, art exhibitions, and other activities. There's also a 150-seat theater where you can have particular activities, particular movies about Pittsburgh, or any other special events.
We want to introduce a very revolutionary technology for energy capture, which is called aerial elastic flutter. Basically, the idea is that you string along very thin bands along a flat surface that's windy, and it vibrates according to the wind. That vibration can be harvested to collect energy. By putting this park on top, a park that shapes the landscapes according to the topography of Pittsburgh, on top, what we're doing is incorporating the green aspects into the building as a whole. We anticipate the construction to be about a year and getting up to that point about 2 years. So we're looking at, if we start today, opening our doors 3 years from now.
So the main point I want to point out here is over that 10-year period, we'll have a net present value of $50 million. Where does this $50 million come from? It comes from those ticket sales starting at 5% and rising to 6% of those attendees over that 10-year period.
It will be a huge icon, beautify the city, inspire innovation, and what all these really lead to is an increase in local visitors. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
You say at Carnegie Mellon University that we inspire innovation. I hope that you all agree that we have indeed at least proven that true.
I don't envy you making decisions.
Bring your score sheet.
Okay, good, thanks.
The students did great. They did everything that we asked.
I thought it was creativity on display. I mean, it was grounded in reality and numbers, but it was also had a lot of room for flights of fancy and just ideas that were not only off the wall but on top of the building.
It took us a while to come to some conclusions about who should get first, who should get second. It was very close all the way through.
None of the other designs, with the exception of the one that had the big aviary that was illuminated at night, said, oh, you're in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
The labor costs that they identified as being the only expenses just that blows me away.
We were trying to balance our interest in the architectural design with the emphasis in this competition on the business plan. And so sometimes we had to be a little bit hard on ourselves because we might have really favored the architectural design. The business plan might have been a little weaker.
Yellow created a business concept. They created a reason to go there. They created the idea that this is not just an observation deck, that this is a place where you basically you concentrate, it becomes an international visitor center, and it becomes a showcase for what's going on in Pittsburgh technologically.
Hey, I worry about the wind and the weather. If we can solve the wind and the weather, I like the ones that had the enclosed environments rather than the open environments, because I think, seriously, I'd be scared to death to be up on top of there.
The red team's design, because it's open air, you've got 3 seasons maybe to play with.
Yeah, and make it uneven.
Well, they were the only ones that solved the problem of how you're going to get all those people up to the roof.
Right.
No, the elevator. They put probably too much emphasis on the green design and structure elements and not enough on how you're going to make this thing work.
Yeah.
What would be good is to take the all-stars from each team and put them in a room for like 5 hours and say, okay, work this out, guys.
We gotta do something different.
Yeah, well, that too, very much so.
What do you think about the integrity of the building?
In terms of this project?
I want to actually give all of the students a big round of applause.
I also like the fact that they were trying to incorporate some of the theories that they were learning into using avant-garde technology, and then they actually researched the technology and tried to figure out, well, it can actually work here.
And now look what you guys are doing. And that's just one of the many, many social needs out there that you guys are going to spend your lives dealing with. That's why I come here to teach. That's what social enterprise is all about. It's an exciting thing to watch each one of you tackle one of these issues. And I'm looking forward to reading about you in the next 10, 15, 20 years as you tackle the rest of it.
I think each team responded very well. You responded differently, but you responded in a very creative way, in ways which made us think, which is what you're supposed to do when you represent a client.
And I just want to say thank you to everybody for this. I mean, it's been such a thrilling 2 weeks to see this happen, and you know, the invaluable work and creativity that's gone into this is just such a created such an asset.
Second place goes to the blue team. First place goes to the yellow team. Way of getting people up there and the integration of technologies in your case. But that's not to say that the purple, the orange, and the red team didn't do a fantastic job. So thank you both guys. And so I think maybe we have some next steps, I think.
Absolutely, definitely next steps. And this video is part of them, was one of them. So.
That's right.
Yeah. I have to say that being involved with this creative process at CMU has been very gratifying and is a reward in itself.
It was quite something to witness and be a part of.
Of course, in the best of all possible worlds, the students could have visited the space and looked off the tower.
At the end of the day, I always like to say all things are possible. It's just a question of cost.
Well, this competition has given us the opportunity to establish a website, highpointpark.org. And so that's an actual event that I think is going to allow us to take this case to the public in a way that we couldn't before because we really had nothing but conversation.
High Point Park is a really interesting idea, and as David's kind of conception of how he came to the idea has a lot of potential, but the idea is only as powerful as the constituency behind it.
For this idea really to become a reality at some point, it's going to have to evolve into an organization that is separate from CMU and capable of managing and overseeing this really complex process. And what part that I play in that, well, that remains to be seen. I don't know. I mean, it's I'd like to think that this moves forward and that I could be involved with it, and we could have a glass of champagne someday up on the roof.